asked a question like, but elders of our family say we never attended classes to give birth.
Elders of our family also did not have ice cream and pizza. Elders of our family also did not have these many hospitals at every nook and corner. Elders of our family did not have the mentality and belief that the body is dysfunctional. Elders of our family, their inner makeup was very different from our makeup, inner makeup. Actually, they are right. You don't need a class to give birth. But the mind and the fear factor is so much more inside us. Also, the same elders of your family, a lot of the elders are the ones who are taking us. The minute the water leaks, they rush the mother up. At least the elders, they should actually then follow what they preach.
And it goes a little
Hi Riba, how are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. First of all, happy Mother's Day.
The same to you. It's a good
And
Mother's Day.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I know you are pretty much occupied, but still I'm happy you accepted my request. I'm so happy.
You're so welcome.
And we are proud to have a birth expert with us today since 13 years who is here to share her experiences, her research, her learnings with us today. And Riba, your bio is just wow. You know, me and my audience want to know a little about your journey. Like, how did you even thought of getting into this profession? Because this is very unique and beautiful profession. So who inspired you to get into this profession? And like, why I'm asking you all these fan type of questions, why? Because first I saw you when you were on live with Maya Samma, and I was so fascinated the way you are speaking. I was so mesmerized the way you are explaining things. You were just amazing. So we can't wait to hear from you, and we are all ears to you.
Okay then. So thank you so much for those words of introduction. I am still, I'm in training to receive words of praise with graciousness. So it still sometimes still embarrasses me a little bit, but I really receive what you're saying with so much gratitude. And I really appreciate you asking me to be on with you. Basically, it's wonderful. It's my first Mother's Day live ever in my life. You're the
Wow,
one
and
who
I'm
inaugurated.
fortunate.
You're the first. You're absolutely the first. Okay, so to come back to your question, first, I would not call myself a birth expert because I really believe the real expert is the mother and the baby of every birth. But yes, I am a bit of a birth geek and I read a lot about birth. I understand a lot about birth. I have been at many, many births because I've been a doula. I've delved into the subject of birth because I'm a birth educator and I'm with the Birth Village team, the birth center. It's a birth center in Kerala. So all of these have helped me to go deeper and deeper into a subject that I really, really am addicted to. So, so I'm very fortunate that way, right? I like the question that you asked because nobody has asked me that question. How did I start getting into birth? And the answer is because I got pregnant, because I had a birth.
Okay.
It was the experience that I had with my daughter that really, like when I got pregnant is when I started really researching more into it. Before that, I was into natural health. I mean, understanding how the body works, figuring out what does the body do, how does nutrition work, those kind of things were always very fascinating to me. And as a journalist, I was going deeper and deeper into those topics already. And it was while that journey had started that then my pregnancy journey began. And then my birth journey happened. And I had a birth that I totally didn't think that was what birth was like.
Okay.
And so I had a very blissful, like that was my experience. And after that happened, I was like, how come nobody ever told me that it can be like this? how come women are not saying it can be like this? Then I realized that, okay, no, many women are not, because I had a home birth. So then I realized it's because they're not having a situation like this. This is why they're not able to experience this. Then slowly, after some years, I realized it's because they don't have the support system. Next reason is because they're not with a team that actually understands this.
Very true.
Right. Only if the team understands and then they're trained in that way, then only you can facilitate spaces for a mother to be in that kind of a experience, right? So I began to understand all of the small dots that are connecting, and after connecting all the dots, the picture of birth is actually not very good for most mums. I began to
Yeah.
understand that. Then when I started working at the birth center, I realized, oh, there are other dots that you can actually connect, where actually you join those dots and then the picture of birth is actually quite good. So it is, I began to understand that actually we are looking at two different pictures. We are trying to connect two different jigsaw puzzles and we think it's the same one. Actually, it's not, so I realized all of the journeys about birth really started from my own experience of pregnancy, of labor, and of that beautiful birth that I had. So the question you asked was, who inspired me? I have to say that my daughter did.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, like
She
even
brought it
when
to
you
me.
were not even like you were not into doula before your delivery, but still, how did you get the courage to deliver at home?
So now this question I've been asked many times because people, so my answer for that is, for me at that point of time when I was completely pregnant and I was going to a hospital and I had very good care. I had a wonderful doctor. She was, she completely understood me, but also I was much younger. Now my daughter is 13 years old now. So this happened in 2008. And at the time I didn't have all of this knowing that I have now. Right? But even though I had a good doctor, as I was continuing in my understanding of what is labor going to be like, the space of birth, and also that feeling that was coming up inside myself that as I got more and more pregnant, by the 9th month, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in a hospital. That feeling was getting that voice was getting so loud inside me, And the decision to not go in there, for me, it was, when you say the word courage, for me, it was like, I need courage to go there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know how it's going to be. I know I'm going to be in a strange place. I know the smells are going to be penal. I know that PVs are going to be there. I know that the nurses are going to be strangers. Right? When I was thinking of that whole thing, for me, it would have taken a lot more courage to go into a space that I did not feel safe in. Not because they were unsafe. I'm not saying that they were bad team. But my feeling, right, I felt a lot more sense of safety to do it in my house at that point of time than to go there. Right? So that was really the reason. And on the other hand, I also did not really, so it's difficult to say this point, but I'm saying it hoping that people will not misunderstand this, right? I am not an advocate for home births. I don't say, okay, yes, stay at home and give birth. I would never say that. I am an advocate for the mother's feeling of safety and her choice. Yeah? Because I know that there are risks in a home birth. Yes. I know that there can be eventualities where a care provider is needed. In my specific case, the hospital was at the end of the lane that I was staying in.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a huge plus for my husband, who was the one who was with me, right? So he knew that if he felt like something wasn't okay, then he could just put me in the car and take me there. We would reach, in a car, you will reach there in about 40 seconds. That's how close that hospital was. So I do think that was one factor for him to agree to all of this stuff. So I do understand that, things can come up in a home birth, and I also understand that for a mother who deeply desires a home birth, I do believe that that is her choice. I also understand that the decision to come to whichever kind of birth you want is one that should not be taken lightly.
But like you
Whether
must
it's a
have
home birth
some.
or a hospital birth or a birth center birth, whatever, equal amount of introspection and thought and decision should be made for each of those settings. All are very important, I think. So with that combination, I hope that I'm not misunderstood. I'm not advocating home births at all.
No,
I'm
but like
advocating a
many are
mother's
interested
choice.
to have a normal birth at home, but they don't have a support system. So you
That's
must
right.
have had a good support system so that you are 100% confident that I can do it at home.
Yeah.
If something
I
happens, there is someone to take care of it.
yeah. So I had two support systems. One, I would say, was the inner support system, which is connected to what I call divine, and the state of being that I had when I was, and it's very unique to me. I'm saying this is only my story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not wish any woman to be seeing that, okay, she did it like that, I'm going to do it. That is not, birth spaces are not spaces like that. But I'm talking personally about my thing. That support system was very, very strong and powerful because I had nurtured it very consciously, intentionally, taken time for it throughout my pregnancy and even before that journey had started. Right? And the second support system was my husband, who I completely trust to be very efficient. He's very hands-on. He's very practical. He's very good with making decisions and executing them. So I did. That was my other support system. And to be very honest, I think I believe that every baby has an intention, whatever the birth is. Every birth has something to teach the mother, and we end up having the birth that we actually can learn the most out of, whether it is vaginal with intervention, whether it is vaginal without intervention, whether it's completely non-interventional and natural, whether it is a interventional and C-section, whether it is an elective C-section, whether it's an emergency C-section. Some part of me really does believe that every journey is encoded with something that is meant to give us something. So with that being said, I do know also that babies participate in their journey to come to the planet. So I should actually say the third support system was my daughter's intention. Looking back, at the time I did not understand any of this, but looking back gives us more clarity. So what I'm saying right now is from looking back at the whole thing. Yeah.
Amazing. So there are many pregnant women watching you right now. So just over to you. Encourage, like, because we awareness, because see, even I was interested to have a vaginal delivery, but nowadays even hospitals are giving some reason, we really don't know how much it is true or how much it is in their favor, but there are many willing to have a vaginal delivery, or they do not know what are the other alternatives they can ask for. So help us in understanding how to prepare ourselves in having a smooth vaginal delivery.
So one thing I want to be very clear of is that, and this is a misconception that a lot of people have, like in the first 3 months, first trimester, we are still accepting the fact, oh, okay, I'm pregnant because the stomach is not showing, right? You don't feel much different unless you have extreme reaction. A certain percentage of mothers only have. Some mothers feel nothing, right? So we don't really feel pregnant, right? It's only by the fourth, fifth month and all that a lot of people start, okay, I am pregnant, and you start making preparations for it, right? So and it is actually in the 8th and 9th month and the 10th month that you're actually like, okay, I'm going to actually have this baby. I'm going to be in a place, it dawns on you very slowly. So what I would like to remind all of us is that the delivery or the labor and the birth is one of the chapters of the whole book of your pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum, and early motherhood. That's all one unit. The delivery itself is not separate. It is part of the whole process that began. And the process, when did it begin? It began when you first conceived your baby. Yeah? So, when you're talking about a smooth birth or a vaginal birth, the process actually starts from conception itself. And I believe that the process should begin even before. Because the bodily process or the physiology of it is the easiest part of it. The mental and the emotional part of it is the more difficult part of it. At this point in our age, I'm saying, if you're a healthy woman, usually your body does its work. Like after you have every meal, you don't need to sit down and meditate and say, this palak, give this many grams of magnesium into my body. Okay, stomach, give it into placenta. We don't have to give any tuition class for any of these things, right? The body just does it. Yeah? So there is that. The body actually knows how to do conception, first month, second month, third month, fourth month, all of it. So just like it knows how to do this, it knows how to in a healthy mother. So we are talking right now of a low risk healthy mother who's had a normal smooth pregnancy. What is that pregnancy showing? Okay, everything is going smoothly. Suddenly at the 10th month, it's not like the body is, okay, body wakes up one morning and says, for 10 months I knew exactly what to do. Now this labor part, no, I have no idea what to do. The body doesn't do that. Right? It's the outcome of the work of the 10 months. So the body knows that also. Yeah. So it's really the mental part of it that we have to really put a lot of work on. So first I would say couples who are going to conceive, you have to get serious a little bit about it because that's the requirement for this age that you're living in. But there is so much interference with our perception of what is our body. There is a lot of heavy ammunition that's coming at you about, can you actually do it? There's so much fear and anxiety around being pregnant and around birth. Because of all these factors, it's very important that you start your journey. Don't wait till you conceive to begin the journey. That's one thing I would say. Because that can contribute to what kind of a birth you're having. Because when we are talking about learning something new and accepting something from a new angle, we know that our mind takes time to receive and accept and receive and accept.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're thinking of conceiving, start exploring these things even when you're thinking of the conception itself. These areas of mind and information and asking questions and really understanding this point, you can start it before you actually conceive. Yeah. We only focus on that physical part of conceiving. The sex and the sperm and the egg and do we freeze it, do we not do it? That is only one side of things. Yeah. So that is one thing I would say. That's the beginning of the journey, is to begin to declutter your mind and take in the right information, understand things and make your decisions. That clarity actually helps a lot of people with even conception. Because conception is not just physiological, it's also connected with the mind. It's connected to how much stress you're having about it. So what I love saying is that information always can help you to have less stress. Because it's usually when we don't know something that we are in the dark and you're like hearing a million different people's perspectives and they're all saying different things. That's when you get more stressed. So if you find your own answers, then that helps you to have less stress. And that could even affect a positive conception. Right? So then you conceive. And then the journey has already begun is something you have to know. So when it comes to a good birth, we know that what we know from data is that in any population, 15 to 20% of women will fall into the high risk category.
Okay.
Yeah. And about 75 to 80% of women will be in the low risk category, which means healthy, smooth, all of that stuff. Once in a while, even if there's hiccups, the body quickly makes up for it and then they continue with that. So when we're talking, let's first look at the high risk mom. Okay. So the high risk mom is someone who may have a previous medical condition. She may have BP problems. She may have diabetes problems. She may have some metabolic issues, either previously or they may develop during the pregnancy. Right? That is a mother who needs specialized care. That is a mother who needs to be with the doctors all the time. Very, that kind of a visual, that kind of a watchfulness sometimes is what that pregnancy needs. But again, remember that is the minority of the population of pregnant women in any country, in any demographic. Yeah. So for those women, there is still a percentage of those women who can have a vaginal birth. So what do you do in that category? You take care of your health. You get very good information. You search for a care provider who is willing to give you what is called a trial of labor if your case is actually good for a trial of labor. Because every mother with GD is equal to C-section. That's not really a scientific way to do it. Right? Certain cases can be given a trial of labor. And according to how that labor is progressing, you can make your decisions along the way. So you need a skilled care provider. You need somebody who believes in the value of the vaginal birth rather than the value of intervention. So you have to be extra careful when you're choosing your care provider if that is your wish. Vaginal birth is what I want. If that is the mother's and the family's wish, then these are the things that they would have to do. They would have to take care of their health. They would have to watch their diet, much more than a low-risk mother may have to do. Yeah. Now, when we come to the low-risk category, what we have is they also. So when we talk about that category, the main thing to remember is that a good labor greatly depends on how can your body do this, and how can your baby do this, right? So your body and your health and your baby's health should be in good condition. Yeah. So for you to be in good condition by the time you reach your 10th month, and the due date is always 40 weeks, right? We know that mothers should not be data tells us that a mother should not be induced unless there is a medical emergency. A low risk mother should not be induced at 36 or 37 or 38 or 39 weeks. Okay. So this is what we know from data. And this is good evidence-based, science-based practice. So that mother, if she has to be able to go into labor on her own and deal with a good labor, the main two components do not arise in labor itself or in the delivery itself. The main components are supposed to be put into practice during pregnancy. And that is good health and good level of fitness, a certain level of fitness. Not that you should be like a gym buff person, but you should have a body that is actually able to navigate that labor, because your labor might be a long labor.
Yes.
Yeah. So not having a completely restful pregnancy that's filled with inertia, inactivity, that's not really a good pregnancy. You're not following practices that support a healthy pregnancy, and therefore a healthy labor or a healthy delivery is not what you're working towards then. Yeah. So what does the body need? The body needs the right foods. And Sanjana just mentioned that. Thank you, Sanjana. The right foods, a healthy diet. Why do you need a healthy diet? Because your body needs good nutrition. Your baby needs good nutrition. Yeah. And if your diet is not healthy, at any point of time, suppose you develop some gestational diabetes, because a lot of mothers are developing gestational diabetes. So remember that if you're a healthy woman when you conceive, your health is really still in your hands. And the health of your pregnancy and the health of your baby is in your hands. And your choices are what's going to affect, okay, a good vaginal delivery or not. That's from the bodily perspective. Yeah. The second thing to have a good vaginal birth would be, and see, some mothers may not want a vaginal birth. They may not be so firmly fixed on that. But the second thing that is very important, I would say, is to have a good class. Go to a good birth educator who can explain all these small things that are involved. Why is it important for you to wait for labor to start? Right? Why is it important not to induce too early? Right? If you induce too early, what are the chances of happening? And why? Right? Why is it important for you to keep moving in labor? So there are fundamental, from science and from research, that there are about 5 or 6 fundamental good practices. Right? Women have to be moving when they're in labor. Women have to be, if you're pushing upright, it actually helps the delivery much better. You should be eating and drinking. So like that, there are like 6, 7 good fundamental practices which have been shown repeatedly in study after study after study. It has been shown that mothers who have access to these fundamentals in practice, They actually give birth better. They after the birth, they say that, okay, it was a good birth. They feel like it was a positive birth. So there are fundamental things that impact that. Right? So you should understand those things, understand your body in labor, right? Get the right information at the right time and use it to empower you. That is a second prerequisite in my list, right? The third one would be find a care provider who really understands this or who follows at least half of these practices. Who does
And
not
how to
practice.
find a child educator, because many people don't even know that there is a child educator, because as soon as they are pregnant they'll go to some hospital, scannings, monthly scannings, delivery, C-section, done. They don't even know that there is a child educator and how to approach to them, and how do we know that which child educator is good. Like this, absolutely, even I didn't know. So,
That's a
and
very good
also
question.
someone asked a question like, but elders of our family say we never attended classes to give birth during our days. How to convince them?
I
This
have
is
this
one
question also. Who asked that? Kirti, right?
Yeah.
Elders of our family also did not have ice cream and pizza. Elders of our family also did not have these many hospitals at every nook and corner. Elders of our family did not have the mentality and belief that the body is dysfunctional. Elders of our family, their inner makeup was very different from our makeup, inner makeup. Actually, they are right. You don't need a class to give birth. But at this point of time, because your mentality, the mind and the fear factor is so much more inside us, right? Also, the same elders of your family, a lot of the elders are the ones who are taking us. The minute the water leaks, they rush the mother up. At least the elders, they should actually then follow what they preach. You know, there's many gaps inside that argument that the elders are now giving. So yeah, I really like this question. Maybe we should spend a lot of time talking about this question at another point of time, you know. But this is my short answer for that. For your question, no, Divya, about the childbirth educator, at this point of time, I think through the awareness that, like, for example, you are raising awareness. Generally, if a mother is looking at this with seriousness, somewhere or the other it will pop up. Birth education, what is that class? You know, somewhere she will see that phrase. If you're looking for information, it will come up somewhere. This is what I know. But if you are in a state of mind where, oh my God, I'm pregnant, now I'm going to be like this lab animal. Somebody's going to take me there. Somebody's going to tell something to me. I'm going to come back. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to be afraid to move. I'm going to just sit and eat whatever is made for me. If that is the mentality, then that mother may not find a birth educator. And very often that mother may not find the birth that she actually secretly desires. So if you have, this is what women need to understand, that it is your right to go and explore. It is your right to search for information. It is your right because this is your body and your baby. Right? Exactly. Then how do we do conversations is another topic. How do we convince family? That's different. That's a different additional layer that comes on. But primarily, this is your right. And it is your job. This is the biggest project of your life right now. Right? Would anybody go to her office and they have a big project and then they will just sit there and say, oh, somebody will do this and somebody will do that. We will sit and research. We will ask our colleagues. We will find out. We'll make a project plan. We will put it together. We will present it. Right? Why none of that when you're pregnant? It's the most honorable project of your life in many ways. Right? Again, it comes back to the mind. Already we have given over ownership of our pregnancy. Even before you conceive, many of us have been trained to give away the ownership of the pregnancy and the decision and all that all belongs to somebody else. And I'm saying, no, it doesn't. I mean, if you don't like it, that you don't have the ownership, you stand there. It's your job. Because they are not pregnant with your baby. You are pregnant with your baby. Right? We have to honor that child. And we have to be true to the answers that come up. Everybody will find different answers. But at least your answers should be your answers. That's the point.
Yes.
Yeah. So birth educators, I would say, are essential. How to find? Okay, I think most of the places they'll find, at least by, if you go to these common pages like Inform Birthing India, Birth India Community, if you follow the birth centers and what they're doing, there is a Supermoms of India has a pregnancy page. There's a lot of places like that on Facebook. So even if you post a question there or on Instagram, you're following, there are many sources like that. Follow some parenting networks. Almost many cities now have parenting networks, parenting and birth networks. Follow their pages. Ask your questions there. Some mother or the other will answer your question. And that will give you a clue to find something else. Yeah. The other part of what you're asking is, how do I find a good birth educator? You have to actually ask for reviews. On Inform Birthing India, we have put up a thread. People who have had experience and who are recommending. Second, I would say don't look at both sides of the reviews. Don't just look at, okay, this person recommended, I'm going to go. Look at 2-3 of them. I would say even make calls and talk to the person. For me, the bigger part of the 50% of my decision is made out of research, and actually 50% of it is I base it on my intuition. Yeah, so I give equal importance to information as I do to my intuition. So a lot of times when you're talking to somebody on the phone, just how they make you feel, especially when you're pregnant, like mothers who are pregnant, they have a superpower. Intuition gets very strong. Why? I think it's because the babies have intentions, they want you to have, okay, go and find that, like, let's figure that out kind of thing happens. So trust your intuition also. And if you want, like, you can always ask them, this is another golden rule, ask those people for 3 references of other people who have taken their class and had good births. And you can call those people and talk to them, message them first, set up a time. So because we are living in a very consumerist and corporatistic kind of healthcare culture, it means that you have to do little extra work. That is true. But if you do this work, you will start getting your answers. From some corners or the other, you will start getting the answers. I hope I covered all that you asked.
Yeah.
You asked about childbirth educator and yeah. So that's my answer.
So now is the time when, even parents want their kids to have a C-section because they cannot see their child bearing all these things. And I really don't know how to, the main challenge here is to convince them because they are the people who are going to take care of us even after delivery. And, we are not staying in US so that we have a different independent family where we can take decisions.
Yeah.
Even after, getting conceived and even after each and every decision has to be theirs only. So it's one big challenge that nowadays people are going for C-section more. May that be, doctor's advice or parents' advice or in-laws' advice or whatever it might be. So in this situation, like, how do we even, basically a mother is under a lot of pressure during her last times. And in that stress, she's already afraid. And instead of, uplifting her, there are always words like, no, go for C-section. And that's the ultimate, that becomes the destiny. So what would be your words?
Again, for this question, my answer is it's because they don't have information. They don't understand that a C-section is actually a major abdominal surgery, which is actually very helpful if there is an emergency situation. That is one very factual side of the coin. It saves lives. Yeah. But if the statistics is telling you that 15 to 20% is high risk and 80%, almost 80% is low risk, then we should not be having this many percentage of C-section should not be that high. That is from common sense itself, you can understand that, right?
Yes.
Second thing, so then you know that they're not all necessary. There's a lot of other factors that are causing that rate to be so high. Second thing is information about what are advantages to the baby if you do have a natural or a vaginal birth. Right? So I want to first make a distinction between a vaginal birth and a non-interventional natural birth. So anytime a baby comes out through the vagina, it is a vaginal birth. For a lot of mothers, they have had extremely traumatic, some mothers that I work with, they have had extremely traumatic vaginal births. And that is because of the high amount of interventions that was used during labor,
Okay.
non-evidence-based practices like forcing them to lie down, forcing them, scheduling an induction when they may not have needed it. So all these things can contribute. Finally, baby is vaginal, but mother can also be very traumatized
Oh my God.
because it's very instrumental. Lots of forceps are used. She has a very bad episiotomy that she takes months and months to recover from. So it's not like the vaginal birth itself is safe anymore. And even then, there are still some physiological advantages that the baby might have compared to C-section. But when you look at the emotional trauma that, okay, an elective C-section mom may have had a much more peaceful C-section than a mother who had a traumatic vaginal birth. So it's not really about the vaginal birth itself. It's about going back to that physiological birth. What is the body designed to do? And stepping in only if the body or the baby is saying, excuse me, I need help. Right? For me, for a mother who wants to have a vaginal birth, that is the formula that is doing justice to the mother and to the baby and to the process of birth itself. Yeah. So a smooth vaginal delivery. So a mother who wants to have a vaginal birth, the best birth that she could have is one that is non-interventional or very minimally interventional. So that the intervention was done only if and only exactly when it was necessary. Right? So those are the mothers who have the really, oh my God, it was so good kind of mothers. When they talk about the birth. Whereas if it is just, we're just focusing on did the baby come out of the vagina or out of the tummy, in some cases, just having a C-section, it was much more peaceful than a very difficult vaginal birth. So we have to remember again, the fundamentals of birth itself, which works with the body, has to be honored if you're looking for a proper vaginal birth or a non-interventional or a natural birth. Yeah. So then your question was, how do we, what was the question? How do we actually support mothers to have it, right? No, you asked another question.
Yes. Because the family support also matters. So I would.
But they don't know the difference between, okay, so then I was going to say the difference between why does it matter that you try and have a vaginal birth if possible. Again, first and foremost for me, it starts with the mother's wishes. Okay, the mother's wishes should be expressed after she takes in information. Because you are a sensible, you are an intelligent adult, you deserve to make your choices after you get information.
Right.
Then whatever choice she makes, I completely honor it. There are mothers who get all the information, then they will choose an elective C-section because they feel like that's right for them. I 100% support that choice.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are other mothers who hear the information, they really want a vaginal birth or they really want a non-interventional birth, but they are not able to have that. Right? So for the reason that you said, when the grandparents are so afraid to watch their children go through the pain and all of that stuff, it's really the lack of understanding about what is encoded, the primal encoding or the blueprint of labor itself. What all does it bring? There are many things that blossom in a labor. Even when a labor is hard, there are many things that are inside it. And these are encoded for the human species to be very robust and strong. There is a reason why nature has designed it this way. And the reason nature has designed it is not to torture every woman who gives birth. That is not nature's intention. It is encoded that way because this process of really going through this really intense mix for the baby and for the mother, it upgrades something inside them. And for a mother, that physiological hormonal changes, it shifts something inside her. Also, a lot of the mothers that I have supported and then who I've spoken to, they really feel like this sense of accomplishment, this sense of, I am such a warrior kind of feeling. It comes through this. Nobody is artificially giving it to her. And nobody is saying that a mother who doesn't choose this is lesser than also. But we have to be very honest and see all of it. So, and not say that one is bigger than the other. One thing, to be very honest, one thing that I find disturbing in in our women's spaces when it comes to birth is that the women who have had that feeling of victory or that feeling of achievement in their births, they hesitate to say it because they're afraid that they'll make another woman who didn't have that, they feel like, I don't want to make her feel bad.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? And I think that is a product of our current, the way the society is. Because in order to help somebody to feel good, I am to make myself feel lesser. This is what we do in our relationships, right? For me, it's the same thing playing out. The true meaning of community of women is that with no judgment and with no lesser love, each person gets to celebrate their own unique experiences. So nobody needs to feel lesser and nobody needs to feel more. The birth itself is not making you feel it. It is the perceptions, it is the other things in your life that are already making you feel, oh, now I'm a failure. That is not the fault of the other woman who gave the birth. That is your inner work that's calling to you. So I think it is only fair to hold all these spaces. So a lot of mothers who have had that fabulous birth experience, they do say that sense of victory. They say that their relationship with their husband changed because now I'm not afraid to stand up to him anymore. Suddenly, just after one birth. How does that personality change happen? Means she has achieved some kind of a shift inside herself, which has not been a mental, it has not been because of inner work. Then this is what I find so fascinating about birth. There is a transformative capacity that it has, which you may arrive at after years and years of inner work. But you may get it like that in a day or two if you just go through a great birth. Now we think back about why does nature make it that way? Now we have to think, oh, why does nature make it that way? Nature makes it that way so that a woman who has had a non-interventional birth, she finds her way of finding her voice, finding her place in the community. Now every community needs to have a very, very strong women inside it. It's the women and the mothers who make better choices for our community, better decisions, better policy making, because we have the capacity to see how does this decision influence our children, how does this influence our planet, how is this going to influence this outside environment, the green spaces. Mothers are always the one who are always thinking about this, right? So nature has designed a mother to step into her power as mother, because before she was not mother, before she was a maiden. Right? So there is something programmed into this process of labor and birth, which helps her then to rise to the next version of herself. Because the planet needs it. It's not just a selfish wish of a mother. Right? The planet needs us to be upgraded to that strong mother person. Then we are able to be that for our children. We are very different to our neighbors. The way we can be compassionate to other people who are struggling, our relationships can change. Lot of healing automatically happens. Lot of pathways open up. Lot of bridges open up in our interpersonal relationship, right? So that is another reason why nature has designed it to be that way for women. Why has nature designed a birth to be like this for a baby? Just from physiology we will know. Like there are plates that actually fuse when you're pushing this baby, pushing through the pelvis and then squeezing through the birth canal. Lot of things happen inside the body. Lot of things happen inside their nerves, inside the neural pathways, inside their brains. Studies have shown that adults who are born through a vaginal or non-interventional birth, they adapt far better to stress than adults who are born as C-section babies. And then what anthropologists and all are, their theory is that, every time when the uterus squeezes and the baby's heartbeat will dip a little bit because there's a lot of effort. And what happens? Everything pumps, everything drops and then everything pumps up. So there's a lot of automatic, because it happens repeatedly, what happens is that the brain, it learns to self-regulate. Because a baby in the womb has never done work like this before. This is hard work. And the process of emerging out onto the planet, there is something encoded inside the baby's physiology and brain also. And doing this hard work, right, it teaches them, it's their first experience of doing, resting. Doing harder, resting. Finding a better angle, pushing, resting. there is a lot of self-regulation blueprint that suddenly starts to be activated inside that baby. And what are we doing? We are not studying children who are 5 years old. This study was done on adults. So the birth that you have, it has far-reaching implications. How does the skull fit? Right? Just for functional health, it's very different. See, of course, a baby who's born through C-section, they do adapt because babies are so resilient. But I'm just talking about what is actually encoded inside the nature's process itself. There are many things like that. Babies become very robust. A baby who does the journey on its own, and there are many areas of, more leaning towards spiritual or, those practices that have a lot of data on their own. The kind of birth that you have. So what the birth that you have is your first experience as a person emerging on the planet. Till then, you are a baby inside mama's womb. Now what is happening? There is a waking up. Why does a baby initiate labor on his own or her own? There is some kind of a waking up. There is some kind of a charge that's going and says, okay, you're ready now. It's time for you to go to the next place. Right? So obviously there's something going on inside that intelligent design. And then they do it. And the process, there is a kind of robustness that is seeded into their consciousness, into their bodies, into their knowing spaces. So why do we need to do that? Because we do want a robust next generation. Why should grandparents encourage their family or if their daughter-in-law or their daughter or their cousin or their niece is healthy? We should be encouraging that mother because it's very good for her. It's going to make her stronger. That stronger woman is what we need. Very strangely, a lot of people will be afraid of having that stronger woman. But if you really love somebody, you want them to get, I want you to do that. Okay, see that you're amazing. I want you to see that you're amazing. Right? So there are many, these are only few of the points that are most easily said and understood, but there are a lot of studies that show there are many. So we know, for example, that again, these are studies done on adults. We know that adults who have had C-section births have more of a tendency to have diabetes, more tendency to have less robust immune systems. What was the other thing? Stress and anxiety, definitely, but there was one more thing. There's one more what we term as a lifestyle disease. It was diabetes and one more thing, I forget now. But adults who are born through C-section have more of a tendency to develop these illnesses. Right? Yeah. And it could be because of, after an interventional birth or a surgical birth, breastfeeding is different. It could be because of that also. It could be because of that pathway of the vaginal seeding. The microbiome was not seeded very well. Yeah. Right now, when we understand this, even good practitioners are seeding the microbiome even in C-sections. So there are all these practices that we are learning and we are doing better. That is the job of science. The job of science is to keep learning, keep changing protocol, keep doing better. That's their job. But it is also our job to understand that all science can do is to learn nature. And why are we trying to learn nature? Because there is a perfection. There is some kind of, how does this work? Right? So first and foremost, like I was saying yesterday, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Because nature knows how to do things. Where we are lagging is we don't know how to be the appropriate support person. We don't know how to create spaces of support that will help this mother to go back to that deeper imprint of labor and birth. Even though that same software was running very efficiently for 10 months. Suddenly we feel at the end of it, today the software won't work. Even though the software is loudly telling you, I'm working, there's nothing wrong with me. Still, we assume that now, 10 months and all, you're fine. Now it's not your turn. Now you stand on the side. That's not fair. It's not fair. It's against that woman's rights. She has a right to make a choice. It's against nature's law. Although most of us don't care about nature's laws anymore. It is also against what's best for the baby. So it's against baby's rights to just somebody else decide whether they need it or not. Every baby who's in danger, see, the advantage now is that we have technology. We can always monitor. You don't have to be in the dark anymore. So
Right.
especially now, we should be doing it better.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's you're breaking a lot of things that aren't broken, that aren't designed to be broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have got a question, Riba. Should the husband also prepare for vaginal delivery?
Yeah, so a vaginal delivery, again, remember that we are talking about a good birth, right? When we are saying vaginal delivery, we're only thinking about the vagina. And the vagina is only the portal through which the birth happens. It's the quality of the birth that you should be focusing on. Yeah? Yes, the husband should also be equally participant on everything for it to actually happen really well, because this mother, when she feels supported and she's with somebody, we are both on the same track. Like she did not, it was not a virgin birth, right? I mean, it was not a virgin conception. Yeah, it took two of you to conceive. Of course, the journey has to be with two of you, and of course, the labor has to be two of you, because this baby wants both of you, right?
Absolutely.
And the second part is that some mothers, they do not have this support. That is a reality. Whether you have the support or not, what is true for you, try and find as many ways as possible to hold on to that. Because even then, even though if you had 10 things, even if you achieve 4 or 5 of those things, you will still feel like, okay, I had that much power. And that's better than not even thinking about it and not even stepping into it. Because no matter how the birth goes, like I said, it still has many, many gateways of understanding yourself, of finding your own truths, many, many encounters with yourself, discomfort, no, I want to be differently. Things that we don't get to engage with in our daily lives, this pregnancy, it all gives us that opportunity. So you still engage with those questions. But ideally, yes, husband should be very much part of it. Because husband is not bystander, no. Husband is father.
Yeah.
And there is a journey to being father. When dads who are at births, right? There's a lot of transformation. I see some of them crying. I see some of them just breaking down, because now they are transitioning to father.
Yes.
Right?
And that's
They
important.
also deserve it. It's their right. And it is encoded in nature. To be with your wife when she is in labor, to continue to support her, to have that chemistry. The chemistry of labor is something that is very sacred and very sensual in its original form. Right? And sensuality awakening within your body, even when it is in labor, it's very nicely aided when you have a partner that is there with you. To hold that sensual, divine, very, very, it's very raw, very animal-like spaces that come up, right? And your partner deserves to be there. Dads, I would rather say, should the dad be there or not? Dads, you should say, it's my right to experience this. The dad should be stepping up and saying, as a father, these are my rights. I would love to see that happening.
Me too.
Yeah.
So we were like child birth educator, as you have mentioned. So do they educate both mother and father, or
Yes.
the only mother, or the entire family, or like a child educator? Are they present at the time of delivery? Are they allowed to be present there and to monitor everything? Or I really don't know how it works. Like a child birth expert is a completely different thing than the hospitals.
Yes. So a childbirth educator is like a teacher.
Okay.
It's just a birth teacher or a labor teacher. So they are going to, it's like classes that, like as if you would go to school, like a very special class that really focuses on making you understand the anatomy, the physiology, the emotional thing, the stages, what can you expect. It is a class. So a childbirth educator is just a teacher of labor, stages of labor, what are the things you need to do. So they are just going to take a class for you. Right? Some childbirth
Throughout the 9
educators
months.
also, They usually have, most of the time, what we have now is that there is one class, and it's best for a couple to take a class. I would say to take a class anywhere between 28 to 34 weeks
Okay.
of pregnancy, because then you will remember things more better. You're already feeling the pregnancy, so you're starting to get more serious about it.
Right.
But anytime between 28 to 36 weeks, you can take the classes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a childbirth educator is a teacher. Just like that. It's very simple. Now, a person who is present for emotional support at a birth is called a doula. That is another role. Okay. But in practice in India now, some people who are a childbirth educator, they also work as a doula.
Doula. Okay.
Yeah. Although these are two separate roles. A doula is not going to be teaching you. But some people, like for example me, I am a childbirth educator and I am a doula. But when I'm a doula, I'm not teaching. And when I'm teaching the class, I'm not being a doula.
Okay.
But what I've seen is when you get to know a couple through birth classes, they get very comfortable having you at their birth. Because then it's not a stranger.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of childbirth educators are also doulas, or I should say the other way around. A lot of people who are practicing doulas are childbirth educators also.
Okay.
Right? But it doesn't mean you can go to a childbirth educator who is not your doula also and get a very good class. And there are very many doulas. There are good doulas who may not be doing childbirth education classes. They are very two different roles. But I just wanted to explain. These are two functionalities. Right? Also remember that a doula is not a clinically trained person. That is either a doctor or a midwife or a maternity nurse or an OB nurse. They are all clinically, so they have the clinical skills to assess, to monitor your baby's heartbeat, to check for dilation if it's needed, to assess, to see if you need any kind of intervention, to see if the baby is in distress, to give you episiotomy if it is needed. And by the way, for a healthy woman, episiotomy rates should be about 12%. We have 100% rate in India.
Okay.
Right? So an episiotomy is also an intervention that should be done if and when necessary. So doula does not know any of these things.
Okay.
A doula knows how to bring comfort to the mother, how to give her emotional support, how to keep her spirits up, how to massage her back, how to be with her and hold her hand, how to join hearts with her on the journey. This is all things that a doula does. Right?
Okay.
So at a birth, the doula is the support person. The clinical care provider is the medical expert.
Okay. So we need both.
You will need both. If you choose to have a medical expert, you will need both. Ideally. Or see if the dad is willing to step up into that role, the dad can be the support person. It all depends on your choices. Again, for a mother, what will I be most comfortable with in birth? She has to understand all of these things. Then she will make her, okay, I want this kind of birth team. I want my husband and my doula. Some will say. Some will say, okay, I want only the husband, but I'm with midwife, so I don't need another doula. That is another combination. Some may have husbands doing really good comfort measures classes, and they may want them in the hospital where they are. Right? So it is up to that couple and especially that mother to make those choices. What do I want in the birth? It is not like there is a written rule, every woman needs this. She may not need it also. Some mothers may be so confident, no, I just want to be alone. I just want to deal with it on my own. And she may want to stay at home till she is 5 centimeters dilated, then only go to the hospital. Each mother should look at the whole picture, and she should create her own jigsaw puzzle, putting the pieces together. Because your birth plan and your birth wishes will be unique to you, because you are a unique person.
Yes.
You are not like anybody else. Yeah. So the doula is different, and for a low risk woman, ideally low risk women belong with midwives, high risk women belong with doctors. This is the practice in more developed countries where midwifery is actually part and parcel of the maternity care system. If you are actually a low risk mother, midwives are the expert of natural birth or low risk birth. Doctors are the expert of high risk birth. This is what we know from data and studies.
So if the mother and the doula or the child expert are on a same page, but usually doctors are not ready to cooperate that much as the doula is supporting. So they have some connections that they will redirect us to certain, hospitals or doctors wherein all of us will be in the same page.
Yes, for the most part, they may have. Like I know in Bombay they do. So if you can go to, so for mothers who are searching for these answers, the database that is the one that we have, Birth India has a database. So that's www.birthindia.org, and there's a database. North, South, East, West, who are practitioners. Then second place of access would be probably your local, if you're in big cities. So we know that Chennai has a birth network, Coimbatore has a parenting and birth network, Bangalore has Bangalore birth network, Bombay has birth network, Delhi has birth network, Chandigarh has birth network. So there are places, right? So if you can reach out somewhere to the birth network, the people in that birth network will give you leads. Oh, this doctor will be like this. You just need to do this, this, this. There will be other mothers who may have tried it out. So you talk to those mothers. That is one way. The third thing I would suggest is then if you have a question, I'm trying like this. This is my desire. I'm trying to do this. I belong to this place. Can any mother help me? You can post it on Birth India community or Inform Birthing India. Two Facebook pages that are dedicatedly looking at this. Inform Birthing India gets a lot of mothers are responding on it. Birth India community, you will get more directed, more focused answers also.
Okay.
So you keep trying, right? You will quite, in this, yes, I understand there are very few doctors who are willing to follow this practice. But what I have seen is that the old-fashioned doctors are less concerned about, oh my God, birth is this thing and I have to make you safe, right? Nursing homes are more matter of fact with normal birth, and that's the way they should be. So somewhere there is a part of us also who are running to these big corporates and then saying, oh, I didn't get it. We are being very snobby to go to old-fashioned doctors and to nursing homes and not trust that they are skilled. They have done thousands. How do you assess if a care provider is good at birth? You see their work record. You ask them the work record. How many percentage of their births are vaginal births? How many percentage of their births are interventional vaginal births? How many percentage is C-section? These are all questions that as a consumer, not just as a mother, but as a consumer, you have a right. You have consumer rights also. You are paying money to a service.
Transparently available.
Some people will say it, but I'm saying more important than first asking, will I get it? It's important to get yourself to ask this.
Yes, yes.
And it's important to, then you can actually go to the PRO in the hospital and say, I want to have this information. It is your right to know the track record. In no other industry will we blindly go and give our bodies over.
So true.
We examine which is the real estate we are going to buy this. Other builders are good, we will check it out.
Right.
Not just like somebody said. We'll go and look at houses. We may go and look at houses that our friends have brought from this builder. After 5 years, what is the house like? Right? We will do more. We will give more input, more importance to these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can ask for the track record. It is your right.
Yes. We have got a question, Riba, from Saranya.
Yeah.
Most hospital doesn't allow partner in labor, and that's scary. In fact, we ourselves are sometimes not feeling completely involved despite it being completely our thing. Most of us are kept ignorant. Like we are made to listen and believe that doctor knows everything and we are to accept everything they say. And what's scary is what's the new normal. For example, some intervention is scary. But women must be informed or inform ourselves of hospitals or spaces that allow partners into labor room and take a request for our birth or let women have a birth plan.
Absolutely. And when you know that you are in a situation that does not actually actively support you for doing it, then it becomes even more your job.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we forget that there is a baby involved. There is a baby involved. There's a reason why you're doing all of this. Keep reminding yourself of that. Right? If
Yes,
you are,
sometimes they scold. Doctors start scolding, that we have no other way just to go by the flow.
that is not your care provider then. See, you will make out if the doctor is that way or not. Quite often during your checkups itself, you will know. Are they being, so what are the things that you would want in a good care provider. You would want respect. You would want to be treated with dignity. You would want to be treated with compassion and love, understanding that you are a person growing another person, right? Compassion, dignity, respect, and continuity of care is something that is your right.
Yes.
First, you accept that. Then you examine the system. Many places do not allow. I want to find a place that allows at least two of these things. I know mothers who have switched 13 and 14 care providers in 9 months.
Okay.
Are you willing to do that? Now the ball is in your court. Once you understand something, then the ball is in your court. And then don't forget there's a baby. There is somebody who does not know how to speak up for themselves, who are relying on you to be their voice and to keep safeguard their rights and their birth journey. We have to be aware of that. And it's not easy. I'm not saying, see, it's easy for me to sit and say this. See, sometimes I would say that I took the easy way out. Like for me, then coming back to the question of courage, I feel so lucky that I chose the home birth. I didn't have to deal with any of the crap.
Yeah.
So even more, I understand why this mother is asking these questions. In a way, I was a coward. If you look at it from the other way, from the other angle. But I was supported in that choice, so I could do it. Right?
Yes.
But we are not always. So that we have to remember that all of us have made our choices. We have a right to the choice. You have the right to make your choice. You have to at least have the right to explore. Lot of people, they don't even explore, thinking that why should I explore, because anyway I won't get this.
Yeah.
Is that an attitude that your baby would be proud of?
Absolutely no.
That's the question to ask yourself. The defeatist mentality, the escapist mentality. And this is the beauty of pregnancy, that it brings up, like maybe throughout college I had this attitude, right? And throughout my job, early job, I had this attitude. Now in birth, the same attitude is coming up and I'm like, oh shit, I can't hold that attitude anymore, right? That is that other, the underlying beauty. It is trying to shift you out of being that you. That is not the radiant and powerful and magical you. And this pregnancy and this baby are trying to be like, come on, Amma, come on, come on. What do you think you're doing? Come on, Amma. That's what these babies are doing. Because life is ahead. There's so much to upgrade in ourselves. There's so much journey to be done to see ourselves as our real, wonderful self when we look in the mirror. Take every opportunity you get without looking at outcome, because the journey itself will change you. It's not the outcome that changes us. It's the journey that shapes us.
Yes. Riva, there's Madhuri. She's telling that Riva know my message. I love her a lot. Let her know that this is Madhuri. She is sending it repeatedly, so she's a fan like me.
Hi Madhuri, I'm sending you love. Thank you so much. You ladies give me so much energy, and my words can come like this only because you are at the other end. You all are at the other end.
We need more of you actually. Many of us, like me, we regret that we couldn't find you before. Or some people like you. We need more of you.
But there is a particular uniqueness in that journey. When you go through something, then you realize, then how the vibration of how you explain it to somebody else is very powerful.
Yes.
We need all these angles. We need all of us to say these truths. Not regretfully and not like a victim, but the power that has emerged in us from that.
Like a warrior.
Yeah, always. I love that word.
And one more compliment. I really want to be a mother soon now, and I'm sure I'm going to choose you in my journey, Riva.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here to do journeys with you. That's what a doula does. You just hold hearts together. Who was that? Kirti, Anna. Is that
Yeah.
Kirti? Okay.
Yes, yes. And
We will
Madhuri, she
see
is
what
asking
life holds.
something. Madhuri is asking, like, I have asked you about pregnancy and age in the last live session, Riba. If you
Yes,
remember.
I remember her name when I just saw it. Is it
Okay.
related to age? She was asking. It is not. It's always good to repeat that point. The health of the body and the health of your uterus, which is the health of your body, those are the more important things. So if you're a menstruating woman and if you're a healthy woman, there is no age on when you can conceive. Or there is no age that says, oh, if you conceive after this, it will inherently have a lot of complications. That is also not directly interconnected. And right now you have technology that can help you. If you are feeling like you need extra help with science, of course you can. It's available. We should make use of all the tools we have. We shouldn't be letting the tools actually be the master of the journey. This is the problem. Finding the balance.
Right. Riba, actually, I wanted to share my, my complication with you. Actually, what happened was, I had nobody to support me, and I was totally working on myself, reading stuff that no, I have to, I was 100% ready to have a vaginal delivery mentally, because mentally preparing ourselves is much more important. So I
Yes.
was, but the thing is, after seventh month, like the baby was in breech position, and till ninth month the baby was in breech position. So when I asked the doctor, they said that your uterus has a sort of like thing, this kind of a shape wherein the head is here and it is unable to move. So they tried to like they tried to do with hand, but
Turn the
still
baby.
it was getting back to the position. And like they said that it is not possible. He was a 80 years old doctor, very experienced, and he was trying, he was genuinely, he also wanted me to have a vaginal, but it was not possible. He said it is risky. And after that, knowing that I cannot have a vaginal delivery, I was like, I can say, into a kind of depression. Even after I saw my baby, I was not that happy, and all those things were. I can say that even till last year, I was still under the regret that I was unable to deliver through vagina. So, is there the thing which they told me, is that really true?
Yes, in some cases. Now remember that there's very few pelvises that have those kind of things. And I would not be able to come. I'm not clinically trained, so I can't really comment without knowing the specifics of the case also. Without seeing that, even a midwife will not comment on this. If they have to see the details of the case. In very, very rare cases, yes, there are pelvises that can make it difficult. But what I do know is that in most of those cases also, it is a trial of labor that shows is the baby going to do this or not.
Okay.
Especially with women who have narrow hips. I don't know about your particular situation, but with women who have narrow hips, a lot of doctors will say you can't have birth. But you have to have it when everything is going fine, you still have to give a trial of labor. You have to let labor start on its own, and especially those mothers, they have to be moving about, not restricted. So there are other things that we can do to support, and a certain percentage of them will end up having vaginal births. It may just be a different kind of vaginal birth, but they may
Even
be
in
able
this
to.
position.
Even breech births are a different thing. Breech births are totally possible.
Possible.
Yeah, breech
Okay.
breech births have been happening for centuries. No, certain percentage of pregnancies will be breech births. Just because baby is breached is not equal to baby will not come out. Now your baby was breached because of the shape of your pelvis. The baby was adapting to it. So in your case, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to comment. Is that correct? But yes, there are 4 kinds of pelvises. And the ones that are actually supposedly now the medical community says you can't. There is no can't yet because you have to have a trial of labor, and only that trial of labor shows does this baby do it or not. Secondly, if your baby is breech and if you're with a pelvis that's narrow or whatever they are saying, you have to be with a care provider who understands how to support that kind of birth first and foremost, and who has had experience in supporting that kind of birth. Because only a person who knows how to deal with that birth will be a person who is not stressed out about that kind of birth.
Yeah.
These are also important factors in that mix.
So does that mean my second pregnancy is also going to be a C-section because of the distortion or the shape of my uterus?
I wouldn't know. You would have to really consult a care provider who understands different kinds of pelvises and what is possible. And now remember, you have already some portion of something has been done. Your body is different. You will have to consult with somebody who understands that particular condition.
Right.
I would suggest consult a midwife.
This time I'm not going to repeat the same mistake again.
And here again, even if you end up needing a C-section, the thing is, it's really wonderful to consult a midwife for your clinical appointments. Even if you're going to give birth in a hospital, it's really good to consult with a midwife because they will give you angles that none of the other care providers are telling. They will give you information and good feedback into your case.
So like
So
a
that is a
midwife
very
is
different
different from a
perspective.
birth educator?
A midwife is like a doctor of a natural birth. A midwife is somebody who has done maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years of study, who has had many years of experience. Then only she becomes a primary midwife. She don't becomes a senior midwife. There is a pathway to that also. So a midwife can support in whatever is medically necessary, a midwife is trained to do. A midwife can do episiotomies if it's necessary. A midwife can do sutures. Sutures are of course natural. That's a part of midwifery. Midwife can assess you, can gauge where your baby is, can turn your baby, can support you, can tell you positions for changing the baby's position, can everything that a doctor does clinically, a midwife does. But the difference is a midwife is not the expert of a high risk birth. So high risk women do not belong in midwifery, but low risk women do belong with midwifery.
Okay.
And especially a midwife with years of practice and experience. Yeah.
So when with midwife, we don't require a doctor or a different, a hospital setup with unknown doctors. When with a midwife, from the starting of our journey, we can be till the end.
Yes. And you can have the birth with them and the postpartum. Midwives take postpartum also very seriously.
Okay.
Your care does not end when the birth happens. Till you are 6 weeks postpartum, you are with that midwife. So there is one person who knows you completely, your case, your ups and downs, your emotional condition, your family situation, and that really helps with the whole journey, Yeah, midwifery care is the clinical care. So some women who are some mothers who are with midwives, they choose to have midwife and also doctor. That gives them reassurance. That is fine. But then they may end up birthing with the midwives. Primary care provider is the midwife.
Okay.
And if it's a VBAC, then the midwife will 100%. If you're a healthy, low-risk mother, midwife will say 100% you have to register with a doctor also. Because in case of a transfer, they want your file and your case to be clear with that particular backup care provider. So they follow very safe practice. They're excellent skills for natural births and for vaginal births. That's the meaning of the midwife is the expert of a low-risk birth. The doctor is the expert of an interventional birth. So what is happening now, mothers who want a low risk expert are going to a high risk expert. And they are expecting that the high risk expert should treat them like a low risk expert would treat them. It's not possible, no?
Yes.
That is where we are getting derailed.
Yeah. Actually, most of us, we didn't know, especially even I didn't know. Now, because you have told all these things, I'm really happy. I'm glad that we know such things that even I can tell somebody that, see, this is how it goes. So awareness is really important. Yeah.
Yes. That's where
Thank
we
you so
start.
much. Yeah. It was so insightful. Like it was something completely new. And I hope I have personally enjoyed this session, and my audience, I am sure they would have enjoyed it. So
I loved it. Thank you.
yeah, one more one question is there: how to contact a midwife in our locality? Any means for it in the third trimester? Like she means that if she is in with a certain doctor for till second trimester, so can she change to a midwife in the third trimester?
Yes. she'll have to contact that midwife. They'll need your case history. They will need your clinical reports. They'll need all of your past data. But you can definitely reach out to a midwife. So right now in India, there are the two birth centers. One is in Hyderabad and the other one is in Kerala. There is another midwife in Goa. So these are the three long-term, skilled, experienced ones that I know. If you're in Mumbai, there are doctors who work with Tulas as a good team, right? So they have some there. If you're in Bangalore, there are doctors who actually are old-fashioned, like old school doctors who actually do lesser interventional. We know that there are, but each city may have a doctor like that. But if you want a midwife, really, you should be able to go to one of these places. Actually speaking, we need a lot more midwives in many, many spaces. But as at this point of time, these are the two places that have very good, skilled, experienced. For almost 10 years, they have been doing this job, so they know what they're doing. That is in Hyderabad at Sanctum or in Ernakulam at Birth Village.
I really wish this information, is more frequently coming up so that people know that where to go.
Right.
Because even if I was educated, but I didn't know to do all these things, where to go and how to approach, whom to approach. But these things are really, really, like, I think this is the most important thing of which the awareness is required.
Yeah. I would agree with you completely.
You people are no less than any mother guiding a kid. So true. And it was a real happy Mother's Day for me and for all of us.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the moms who are listening and to you, Divya. Yeah, Asagaon Birth Center in Goa. That Sanjana has put. There's a birth center in Goa. So Goa, Hyderabad and Ernakulam, these are the three centers that I am familiar with their work. I trust their work. I trust their practices. These are the three midwives that I actually know.
Like the people are staying away from these places, you mean they should go and stay there and, be with them too?
So each of those centers has different protocols. Because I work with Birth Village, I know what the Birth Village protocol is, but each of them will have solutions. So you should reach out to them. If it's Birth Village, then your prenatal appointments are online. You will be seeing a local care provider in whichever city you are in, sending in the data, having a 1 hour appointment every month with your midwife. And when you're 36 weeks pregnant, you should be at the city. Because technically labor can be anywhere between, you can go into labor anytime after 36 weeks and by 42 weeks. 36 weeks to 42 weeks is that window where labor can start. Inside that window, most healthy babies seem to come at 38, 39, 40, 41, around that time. Few will come before and few will come after. Most of them will come in that chunk in the middle.
Okay.
Right? So they need so that is their protocol. Similarly, Vijaya will have her own protocol. So each of the centers will tell you how they function. And yes, many mothers from other cities do travel to those centers and they do go there for the birth.
Okay. So Riva, thank you for so patiently you have explained each and everything, and it was kind of information plus motivation, which is much required. So thank you so much, Riva, for this session, for your time, and I will this live will be special for me, and I'll remember it on every Mother's Day.
Oh, that is so beautiful to hear. I'm sending you so much love, so much gratitude for inviting me to do my very first and only Mother's Day live so far. So Thank you so much. I'm very pleased and happy and honored to be here. It is a privilege to actually be able to speak all of these things. And I want to say thank you to everybody who is listening. Yeah, wonderful. Let's just keep talking and spreading the word.
Yes.
As long as we keep speaking, then the people who are seeking will come and find.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Riva, take care, be safe, lots of love. Bye.
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 Bye.